Beyond and hello, everyone. My name is Jonathan Dormish from IGN. I am joined, thankfully, today by Peter Kavik from Toys for Bob.
Hi.
The developers of the Spyro Reignited Trilogy. You were a senior producer.
That is correct.
Awesome. So we are going to jump in. We are live streaming the Spyro Reignited Trilogy, which comes out tomorrow on PS4 and Xbox One, November 13th, if you want to know the exact date. We are going to be streaming it for the next 2 hours, going into sort of a bit of the development of the game, just playing around, showing you how actually bad at the game I am. Now that my review is live on IGN, of course, you can read that review on IGN.com, and you can also watch it on IGN or YouTube.com/IGN. We are streaming today on IGN.com, as well as Twitch.tv/IGN, YouTube.com/IGN, Mixer.com/IGN. That's correct, Mitchell? Yes. So if you are there, please jump into the chats, and if you have any questions, we will be happy to answer them, whether it's about my review and how much you hate the words that I wrote, or about the game itself, and you will probably be better at that. People will always find a fault. That's how it goes. But I thought we'd jump in and maybe just start right from the beginning of the game. Sure. That works for you. And to kick it off, I just wanted to start really from the genesis of why you guys want to approach this, because obviously there are a ton of remakes and remasters these days, and a lot of dipping into nostalgia. But I think we see a lot of developers get it right, and some take some missteps with them, and some seem like obvious cash-ins at times. But this, to me, is a labor of love, it feels like, from minute one. This I clearly see the intent of you guys are Spyro fans.
Well, thank you.
And
I appreciate that.
So if you wouldn't mind just maybe telling me a bit how you guys decided this is what you want to do with Spyro next.
Sure. So while we had our hands on Spyro for a number of years, move this up. Better? We had heard the fans over the years talking about how much they really wanted to go back to the original games and have some purity of the gameplay that they knew and loved. And when it came to us actually having the chance and Activision letting us go ahead and make it, it was something that we just jumped on immediately because it seemed like the perfect fit.
And so I'm curious for you guys, where was the development start with it? Was it trying to figure out what the look of this update would be? Was it the sound? Obviously, people have such fondness for the score. Was it debating what you wanted to modernize with the gameplay? Like, where did that all kind of start? Like, what was
Sure. I think it fell a lot on the idea of getting it to feel correct. And by that, it was you wanted this experience to be genuine and honest to when you first played the games. And that sort of set like the tone for how we made a lot of our decisions. So it would go from how we get correct metrics for what a jump is, or how it should feel when you're gliding from A to B. Like, that was really important. And so that sort of informed other decisions as we went forward to how can we flex our muscles a little bit to get some more creativity and visual flair that wasn't there before coming to life now. And so it was all those things came together, but at its heart, it was like, how can we honor this the best way possible?
And that must be an interesting thing to have to deal with, because you are obviously starting with another developer's work initially, and there's clear reverence for what Insomniac first had here. But just even looking out here with the way you guys have filled out the world with the vistas and stuff, I was blown. It was like, my mind was blown. It was like, oh, this is what my mind thinks the game was like.
Sure.
But no, it's better than that. It's better than what my mind remembers, because there's just so much there. Yeah. What was there a challenge of wanting to not go against what Insomniac had created, but also wanting to add Toys for Bob's personal spin?
Oh, indeed. I mean, there was no way we couldn't. So I think you hit the nail on the head too with how you remembered it. We have so many people at the studio who are intense fans of these games, even from the beginning, and everyone really wanted to make sure that they were trying to do justice to the way that you remember them. And so when we have things like the vistas that you can look out against, you sort of like write over it in your memory about what it looked like and what it felt like, because it was a sort of time and place thing. And so we had the chance to go ahead and be like, we're going to just put a couple of trees there, have like vibrant clouds, do a little bit more flowers and color here, because 3 console generations ago, it was a little bit more limited.
Yeah, there's a lot more you can do with it. I remember I was at the Comic-Con panel for Spyro, and I think they talked about how there are more... all of the pixels it took for Spyro in the original games are now like in his nodes.
Yes.
Like, it's the same number of pixels, which is just insane. So did the team essentially, thank you. One of my favorite things, so as someone who's been a big fan of this, we'll probably jump around since there's so much to talk about.
Sure.
One of the things that you did add to the game are these skill points as a sort of meta goal. How did that process go? Because obviously you're keeping what's intact of the challenge in the original game, but forcing people to, maybe keep an eye out for these specific challenges. How did that process go?
I think that was part of an area where we felt we could modernize a little bit or bring the games up to more of today's standards. And the collection is such a huge element of the Spyro franchise that it was such a great opportunity for us to lean in a little bit more and just have some more fun with it. And in turn, have more rewards that you can give the players.
Was there ever difficulty? Were you making them too challenging or too easy? Was there like a lot of refinement with those?
I think that's the case always with games, is you just end up finding the sweet spot over time.
Yeah. And I love also, just as you were saying, there's such collecting is so inherent to Spyro.
Oh, yeah.
Having the guidebook, which was such a big facet of Ripto's Rage, like I still remember it in my head. I was looking up old screenshots and was like, oh yeah, I have that imprinted in my brain. But just having this so accessible for everything and being able to use it to jump around and all these little modern conveniences, it's so great to have in the game.
Definitely.
And I'm really glad you guys were able to address that and put all these things in. I did want to talk a little bit about, especially since we're in the first game, and if you are watching at home and you are like, hey, they were talking over the intro cutscene, we do have the opening minutes of the first Spyro the Dragon as well as Ripto's Rage and Year of the Dragon on IGN, so you can watch those without us talking over it. One of my biggest questions I want to ask is the dragons.
Yeah.
For the first game, they are so cool. I like with the first game. It was when it was initially released. It was largely the same models used over and over with different voices.
Yeah.
How did the process for making these dragons that have such distinct personalities go? Because there are so many of them and they all feel so unique.
Mm-hmm. That was actually a great part early on in the project, where we were having the debate of, is it just strictly follow the guidelines from the original game and have, let's say, a template of 4 different body types and like color palette changing, or what other things can we explore? And so we had over 400 characters. There was a number of things that are like, well, maybe we should just be really strict about adhering here. But then Josh, one of our art directors, ended up looking through some concept art ideas of how it should go. And as soon as some of them started coming through, just like different ways to give backstory and personality to the different dragons, it was super cool. It was like right away, like, we can't not do this at this point.
This has to be the game.
Exactly.
Yeah. When I was first playing through it, it's, you unleash a couple of the dragons. And the first one or two is like, okay, yeah, that seems like a cool buff dragon guy who you would expect in the fantasy world. And then I get to one, it's like, why does he have all those clocks on him? Or what? Oh, he's a painter, obviously. Like, there's all these little touches to them. Were those designs like based on people on the team, or were they just thinking?
They were all over the place.
It was,
Yeah, I think I had a huge kick when I first saw the barista.
Oh, yeah.
Just because I'm like, oh, can we get tattoos on his wings?
Oh, yeah, the way that it's not just them wearing stuff, but the way their wings are different, the way their bodies are even different. It's fascinating.
Well, I mean, like, you can have so many little details that will tell so much. Just having a paint-splattered smock gives you so much more than just the lines and dialogue.
Yes. Yeah, it's crazy I was talking to a few people in the IGN office about this, they have memories of the old games and they're seeing this, and in 10 seconds, I learn more about this character than I do in some games that go 30 hours. It's like, oh, I know exactly who that dragon is. I probably know that guy in real life. Obviously, there is a Skylanders cartoon going on. Have you guys already started doing a Dragon Saturday morning cartoon negotiations? Because these dragons deserve more screen time.
I have absolutely no idea.
Anyway, all I'm saying is I'll pitch it and I'll happily write everything you need for it.
Okay, we'll work together.
Perfect. No, but that's one of my favorite things about this game, and especially not just with the dragons on their persons themselves, but in the world, where one of the other dragons who's an artist, you see in his house in the Toasty level that he has paintings of his past in there. That gave you guys, I assume, a lot of freedom in how you enhanced and modernized these worlds.
Well, yeah. I mean, in as much as you don't want to change the way jumping feels or the height of something or how far you have to go to get to X number of gems.
Yeah.
Having pieces of art on a wall is a great way to just elaborate the world. And so those were all tremendous opportunities for me.
Well, and you were talking a little bit, since we're in the first game, it feels like a great place to start with the movement of Spyro and wanting to nail that. How you weren't working with original code from those first games, correct?
No, there was a lot of feel refinement. A number of our team worked together and had a good amount of discussion on what it is to feel right. Be it our character designers, our animators, our riggers, all coming together, sort of looking at how there are different ways you can maybe put inflections, I guess, is a way of looking at it, or just little touches like licking his paw or like stroking the side of his head. Just those little touches go a long way to defining him. And then just the smoothness of like the arc of his jump, you know. So there were opportunities there to just do the little bits of embellishment that really helped him stand out more. Just hit, I think, a lot of how I remembered him.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. Watching, I put a few of the idle animations on now, but this happened accidentally when I left the game standing and seeing him. There's at one point he sneezes and the fire comes out and singes the grass around him. It's just like these little touches. He's this perfect cat-dog mixture, and his personality just comes through in every frame of the animation. I love it.
Oh yeah, I think it just makes it feel so much like a little kid.
Yeah,
and that's like the heart of the adventure.
Was it difficult though, especially obviously the animations to get right and get that feel are important, but specifically maybe the fire breathing and the charge move and his glide?
Okay. Yeah, no, it's good.
Was all of that I assume went through a lot of refinement,
Yes.
or was it figured out early on?
Well, we had a baseline set up early on so that you could build out the rest of the world and sort of determine how you're doing the and placing, etc. But you don't ever want to stop taking a look. There's different ways that you can tune it and make sure that, like, maybe there's these one or two instances with a set of jumps that you're doing that just don't feel right. And you have to look at either how he's jumping and if there's a global issue there, or if it's something where it's an environment change. They sort of reflect each other in a really nice way.
So were there ever any major issues where you are improving on the environment with, obviously, these modern updates, both graphically and just what you're able to do, where that caused some issues with the gameplay, where it was like, oh, we noticed a jump may be much easier now or something because of the additions we've made to the world or anything like that?
I think it got easier with the analogs that control for the camera.
That definitely helps, yes.
But that was something we went into it expecting.
Sure.
You know, and that seemed fair and the right kind of decision to make. But otherwise, it's all going to be a process of working in harmony between the different departments. And so, yes, there were definitely times where you'd see bugs come about from X, Y, or Z, and it's just a matter of different members coming together to help figure out what the right resolution is.
Yeah, and I do love it. Was crazy jumping back in and realizing he's charging like I remember. I'm able to land like you were saying. Oh, these jumps are a little bit easier because I can actually point him in a better direction where the camera isn't just going around, but it doesn't rob the experiences of their charm.
Thank you.
And you're welcome. And if you want to hear more words like that, you can check out my review on IGN.com. But I do think what's crazy is too, obviously, as the series evolved, was there much discussion ever about tweaking the gameplay in any major way? Like, obviously, we see new abilities, just of the fact that he can go in the water in 2 versus 1. Or, you know, the side characters who come in 3 and you're the dragon, or the headbutt in 2, things like that. Was there ever any thought about bringing those things into the trilogy earlier?
Yes. And I mean, all of those are fair game when you're looking at remastering a trilogy and just bringing it to life for a new day. How many things are honoring the story and honoring the experience of when we first played them?
Yeah.
Versus how many things are just sort of throwing it all at the system and seeing what holds up. And there's, like, having the limitations in the first game does add to that uniqueness of the experience. And so there was definitely discussion as we were going about it, but this felt like the right way to go.
Yeah, I think it absolutely holds true for those experiences, even as we are in this main area, when you're jumping on those platforms. If you miss and you hit in the water but nothing happened, it wouldn't feel the same as when you first discovered it.
Exactly.
Do you know what the dragonfly following you is doing?
I love it so much. When I first noticed the painting, I was like, oh, that's just perfect. Was Sparks hard to nail with the new design? Because obviously it's a very small part of the world. But how was the design of Sparks?
Well, he was more a stick with a ball at the end before. So this is just a cool chance to give him more life, you know. I was this morning checking out the beginning of Ripto's Rage and seeing just how he emotes as they're chasing into the portal just right off the bat. It's like those were things that weren't available before, so we were able to give him a little bit more lushness, a little more identity.
Having him in some of the animations sort of like spin around and face the camera and smile, it adds so much to this character who I spent hours with as a kid. It's now he's back and he has more attitude than ever. But were there... I have so many questions for you, and I'm like, where do I go next? But one of the things that I think fascinates me about the design too, not just in the visuals, but the sound of the sound effects as we were going through it, just hit me of like the gems and everything. Yeah. How do you nail the sound that you remember as someone playing this 2 decades ago? Like, how do you make sure the sound?
Dude, our audio team is awesome.
Yeah,
they totally went to town, and
they are wizards.
They right off the bat were trying to make sure that the things that we all know are iconic were done justice to from the get-go. and I think they really did a great job with it.
Is it? I assume obviously you weren't using the original code for level layout and anything. All the sound effects and everything are brand new as well.
Yes. I'm trying to remember. I believe that is correct.
Okay. If one of them isn't, I'll give it a pass.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
Of course, anytime. God, yeah, these dragon animations. As I was capturing the game for the review, I made sure to capture like 15 of these guys.
Sweet.
And was just like, please put them in. Please put them in. They are amazing. I love it so much. I'll let him talk and get out. I'll head into Toasty. So Toasty was one of the first levels I think shown off for the game.
Yeah.
And that's a curious thing. I'm wondering if you could speak to it at all. Of obviously, since the announcement of the game earlier this year of the trilogy, there's been so much fan response, and I've appreciated how much Toys for Bob has been willing to show off the game, because there's occasionally, when before release, people can be resilient to show a game.
Sure.
But obviously, people know these trilogies, and so you're highlighting what's changed, but what has also remained the same. Why did Toasty feel like it's a good starting place to show off this game?
Okay. I think that's a question for a couple different people, but in my mind, it's actually a really good example of all the elements that are coming together. So you're going through a bit right now, too, with the different jump heights, the way the grass is moving around you, and just the world is reacting, as well as some of the details once you get ahead, seeing the paintings in the castle.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of elements that we knew were great places to show some of the core philosophies of how we were developing the game, and then add on to that, you have a ridiculous boss.
Of course.
So it's just a whole bunch of things working out well together, and this seemed like a great place to show off.
It's a perfect sort of captures the essence of the charm of Spyro, especially with that Toasty battle. How was speaking a little bit back to the dragons, but also just the sound design in general?
Sure.
A lot of the original voice actors were used, or attempted to be used, to bring back those voices.
Yeah, where possible.
How was that process? Because I imagine it can be like people voicing 10 seconds of a dragon line, but I assume people voiced multiple dragons. How was it? Did you work at all with those voice actors?
I personally didn't.
Okay.
I know that our audio team had a lot to do with it, as well as working with our partners at Activision. But there was a lot of intent from the beginning to make sure that as much as we could, we were getting what felt genuine. And so where we could get voice actors that were using throughout each of the 3 games in different places.
And especially with the decision, obviously, to bring back Tom Kenny as Spyro. Obviously, there were 2 Spyro voices in the original trilogy. Thank you. Almost out of hell. So we'll see how this goes.
With Tom Kenny, that was a chance to unify Spyro. With the Reignited Trilogy, it really is a trilogy, and if you were to have a break there in the identity of the voice, it sort of felt unnatural.
And Tom, seeing him speak, especially with the Panzer Comic-Con, he just seems to still love the character so much. Obviously, it's been so long since he first met him, but there just seems to be that clear connection to, he is Spyro for so many people.
Oh, totally.
And it's nice to really have him back for all of that. Going more into the sound, though, we were talking a little bit about beforehand, the score of this game is obviously beloved by so many people. It was produced by Stuart Copeland, the Police, of course. What was the process going through that of not wanting to break what wasn't broken with that soundtrack, but also modernize it? Can you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah. So Stefan, we talked to him a little bit before.
Yes.
He had some good visions of how he wanted to take things with the music while still honoring it, and this is a lot of the philosophy we had from the beginning. And that if you're listening in detail here, the way that the audio reacts, the music will react in different intensities of gameplay. As soon as you get the Toasty here, it amps up and you'll hear other layering of implementation. So part of it was we wanted to make sure that we were doing the honoring job of the original while finding ways that we could elaborate and make it more robust. And I think that's sort of what you're getting to see a lot, especially here in Toasty, is how that can come together nicely. So it doesn't feel like in any way you're doing anything a disservice, let's say, and it's more just an homage with a little more.
Yeah, it's crazy. I jumped back and forth. I appreciate that the team gave the ability to swap between the soundtracks. Hearing both the difference but also the similarity, and it really does bring that idea of, this is that same sound recaptured.
Yeah,
it feels full. Like you said. I think it adds so much to the experience. Was it also bring Stuart Copeland back for the main symphony at the beginning, the title theme? I love that theme. Yeah, in the way it just brings everything together.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was elements that he loved.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really cool.
Yeah, it's great that he was a fan of these games in the way of that work. That clearly you guys are too. Would you mind if I swap the
I
controller
will
with you? I'm
try not to be horrible.
It's okay. I died already, so it's fine. Yeah. Thank you. I'm going to jump into the chat. Again, we are streaming on IGN.com, YouTube.com/IGN, Twitch.tv/IGN, and Mixer.com/IGN. So if you have any questions, please let us know, and we will be happy to answer them the best of our ability. I'm going to look through the chats as we go. Was out of curiosity from my point of view, because obviously there's so many places you can start with it. Did the team follow sort of a linear development process of trying to nail down Spyro 1, then Spyro 2, then 3, or was it obviously just more of a grab bag sort of thing?
Partially. There was opportunities for that early on where we were doing a lot more of the definition, but as I'm going to start talking slower as I'm trying to play and
Of course.
drive. No, as we went along, as we got more teams working on the art for the levels or the character concept, enemies, etc., then there was a lot of deviation and a lot of work going on in multiple areas at the same time.
I was like, get those gems.
This feeds to my compulsion.
Yes, me too. I love that nature of it. Are there a lot of like collectors on staff? Is that sort of an innate thing when making these games, that people who weren't collectors just become that, or were there just a lot of collectathon sort of people on staff?
Oh, I think there are a lot of collector people on
That
staff.
just
but
how it
you know,
was.
I will leave that to them.
Of course. Looking into it, let's see. From the Twitch chat, we boosted TO with a lot of O's. We talked a little bit before about whether or not to integrate Spyro's abilities from Ripto's Rage Reader, the dragon, into this. And they're specifically asking how hard that would be. I know we talked about it a little bit, but did you guys test that out? Or was it?
I mean, there were like rooms where you're setting up the basic gameplay of Spyro,
Sure.
but just when you think about doing something like that, there are sort of design elements that are going into play in the first game that the rules of the second sort of change the way that you'd approach it. Sure. And so, yeah, it might do things like make some things easier, but it also would make the feel of the experience less genuine. So it sort of seemed like if we were going to do that, we might want to like go down the road of putting in other elements that suit those moves or powers or whatever.
Gotcha.
And that's sort of like, that's a risky or tricky area to go down.
Yeah, it becomes, I feel like, less of a remake at that point and less honoring the original, and things can just start developing. You're making a new Spyro.
Yeah.
And it's like, let's start here first and see how that goes. This is a small question I can answer very quickly. Floopity Flop asks, are there multiple save files? There are 3 different save files. I love what you guys do with even just the pause menu, just speaking to the design of this whole thing. Not even just this, but the main menu. How you, depending on where you are in each game, that's sort of the art that will appear. It's just small little touches like that. I feel like there's an understanding of people love the entirety of these worlds, and seeing every little aspect of them. For you personally, what were some of the worlds that you wanted to really revisit or were excited to?
Oh, jeez.
I can imagine it's a long list.
Well,
or a short one.
No. It's a pretty long list. Just it's been so many different things as we've gone through the development that there's charming elements to each. Dark Passage, Sunny Beach, Sunny Villa, brain farting while I'm driving.
Sunny Villa was great to see again for the first time too, and just the skateboarding.
There's a lot of fun across the board with them, so it's like different elements of each. When I could go in and see some things like having, even down to having like hanging vines that look like make something feel a little bit more ancient.
Yeah.
Like it's details like that even would make things pop. So we'd go from some of the concept art that Josh and the team would be generating, and seeing that come to life. Like there are things that in levels that would be more innocuous that would be like, oh, this is a really great idea.
Yeah. And that would lead to possibly changes for other levels too?
Depending. So if we're talking about a flight level, we'd think about like how we're arranging what the different collectibles are in there. But nothing was like an intentionally large or dramatic change. It was just sort of like, what's a nice flourish that adds sort of there's some vines there. That helps sell my point.
Yeah,
it's
perfect.
It's a little thing, but it just sort of makes it feel like it has a history.
Yeah.
And that was a real selling point. Once we got that to go right, it was feeling really good.
Yeah, I went back and watched some footage of the older games as I was playing through these, just to be like, oh yeah, that was there in the first game, and then you go back and it's, oh no, they weren't even close to having that sort of detail. It's crazy to see how much you guys have filled out the world. I'm curious actually to talk a little bit about the flying levels as you were mentioning. So I'm terrible at those flat out. I am just
You
awful.
aren't alone.
How do you go about? I think those are such interesting levels. Were they approached in any different way than the standard sort of like main platforming levels, or were they really the same idea of like focusing on the additions to enhancing the sound, the visuals, all that sort of stuff, or were they like wanting to maybe tweak the flying there a little bit to make them...
That was part of the tuning process.
Yeah.
So over time, yes, there were tweaks. I lost egg.
Oh, yeah.
But nothing that was like a foundational change from the original.
How good are the team members at those flying levels?
Some of them are amazing, and I usually feel ashamed. So
It's funny, having played through it, I was way better at the ones in Year of the Dragon than I was in the at the Spyro the Dragon ones. Those are just, I still cannot for the life of me 100% some of them. It is a challenge for me.
So we should go to some.
Oh yeah, we should absolutely have a face
kidding.
off. Oh no, let's do it. Let's embarrass
No, I'm
them.
just gonna be foolish when I do that. I'll be like, oh yeah, he crashed in 5 seconds. Nice, good work, Peter.
I can at least get 7 seconds.
Oh,
I
okay,
think.
good.
So we'll see how it goes. From YouTube, just a curious question. I think that we can launch into more why this trilogy made the most sense, aside from being the starting point. Someone asked, did you ever consider remastering Enter the Dragonfly? And obviously there are so many other Spyro adventures beyond these 3, but Toys for Bob has had such time with Spyro in the part of the Skylanders universe. Why did it make sense to go all the way back to the beginning versus maybe picking from throughout his history?
I think there was a degree of reverie that the team had with this initial trilogy that made it really appealing for us to approach. And with the time that we spent on the Skylanders franchise, just having the chance to go back and show how much we love the characters from their foundation, like what inspired us in the first place, that was just too appealing to pass up.
And I am curious, obviously the Spyro in Skylanders has a different art style than this specific Spyro and even the original one before this update. How do you go through that approach of focusing on the same character but obviously making very distinct versions of them? Like, how did you not want to maybe cross over into the Spyro you guys had focused on so much with Skylanders, but keep them in line with that?
Sure. That was actually part of what I was talking about before, where we wanted to stay true to the spirit of the original.
Yeah.
And that was a guiding principle throughout. And so it was, there were opportunities, yes, to go with other versions of Spyro, but for the Reignited Trilogy, it made a lot of sense to do him the way that felt purest.
Absolutely, it makes sense. And I love what you all did with Skylanders, because I think it was evolving Spyro. I was a huge Toys for Life person when that whole craze started. And I think fleshing out both Spyro but also this larger universe, it was amazing how much it fit to him, but also allowed it to be its own thing. I'm curious a little bit about the design philosophy for all the enemies and other characters, though, in these Spyro games. Yeah. They talked a little bit about it at Comic-Con, but obviously for people who weren't there or didn't watch any of that stream, how did you all go about making sure the other enemy designs and the other friendly character designs stayed true to your redesign of Spyro as well? Was everything always sort of in reference to him? And making
a little
sure?
bit. I mean, like stylistically. And I'm definitely not an artist, so I
Of
will
course.
defer a lot to Josh
I
here.
appreciate it.
But Josh and Amber, there were opportunities, though. This was a lot of storytelling elements we could do in there. And so it's sort of the same way with the dragons. Once you get to an enemy, like, you have infinite Norks floating around. In the first game, it's like, okay, well, they are doing different things. They have identities. There's a bolt hammer. Like, what's that going to be like? And, like, it's just a flourish thing that you can build out of that.
Yeah, you see so much, and even not just the design of the characters, but the way they live in this world and the way they move around and everything. It gives them such more of a distinct, like even just these enemies.
Yep.
The way they're hopping around, I love it so much. I also
learned a lot from the frogs.
Yeah. I love the readability too of them, of understanding which enemies you can run into, which you can only set on fire, things like that. Is that a big challenge, because obviously you had what was built into them from the original games, but adding so much detail to them, was there ever any worry about making sure they were still readable in that way?
Yes. Sorry, I just
no,
through
absolutely.
the giant Nork there. I really wanted to go to him. Yes. So the readability is actually a really important part, as you really well put just there. Sorry, I keep on getting distracted by
no
these
problem,
dudes.
Please.
No, there's something inherently great in how the original games were done in terms of how you could identify what you were supposed to do, and it sort of indirectly gave you the rules for how to play. And so that's not something you can really afford to lose. That's part of the DNA of it.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I would like to, after we go through this level, I do want to challenge you to a speedway race before we head into Ripto's Rage. Going through a few of the other questions, it is in the options, but did want to mention, someone asked, can you choose different camera settings? There is the active or passive difference, and I just wanted to speak to like what a world of difference it makes to be able to fully control the camera in these games.
I love it.
It's so great, and obviously, like we were saying, it does make some of the jumps a little easier, sure, because you can see around corners and things better, but you also get to, I think, appreciate all of the world design that was inherent in Insomniac's design, but also in the artistic design that you guys have put into this world.
Oh yeah.
I think you're able to see all of it so much more.
I love that. That's actually one of like my favorite of the concepts, and it came to life really well here. But yeah, there's some real great fun that comes out of the art and the controls that you get, being able to see more of it more clearly.
But it doesn't destroy the experience of Spyro, and it doesn't make it a breeze or anything.
No.
But I do love that. I think
still
this
die
is,
a lot.
Oh
in
yeah.
These games.
Hey, I died earlier, and I will probably get plenty of comments for that the rest of my life. Thank you, everyone. I am curious about that balancing though for the difficulty, because obviously Spyro is very kid-friendly and family-friendly, but this is also playing to a hugely nostalgic, somewhat older audience. Were there ever any worries about making sure the difficulty was tuned for that whole spread, or?
A little bit, and I think that once we got into it more and people were playing it from all of our designers and developers under our QA, people were starting to see that there is a lot of inherent challenge in it. So it's sort of got the range depending on how you play. If you're just going through and just trying to get through the levels, you can do it. It won't be super challenging. But if you're trying to 100% across the board, you're going to have a number of obstacles, let's say.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It was funny. I went into my old habit with the game of essentially I mainline my way through a level as fast as I can, and then it's like, okay, where is everything I can go explore, and how do I get to it? Also, from the Twitch chat being asked, we mentioned a little bit with the skill points, but did you add some kind of gallery in the game with either your concept art or Insomniac's concept art? I wanted to say specifically.
That's a great question.
Yeah. Specifically, the art, including the concept art, is Toys for Bob's work, correct?
Yes.
Yes. And the team did, at least, obviously Insomniac didn't work on these games, but you did, the team did speak to them. To
Yeah,
a certain
there was,
extent to make sure.
like we consulted with them early on to just make sure that they knew where we were coming from as we were making it. They had an idea of the style that we were going for and the way that we were trying to provide reverie for the content. And so, yeah. To your question in regards to the concept art, I would say for people to collect some skill points.
And see what's in there. I do
Just
love,
maybe.
yeah, just maybe. I do love also that Toys for Bob, like I was saying, with just not just gameplay, but being able to show off the concept art that went into so many of these designs on Twitter and social media in general and all that.
That's been a lot of fun.
It's awesome to see. How has the interaction with audiences been throughout this year? Obviously, there's a huge.
They have
love
been
for Spyro.
amazing. I think that's part of what's been fueling the team a lot too, because like we have Monday morning meetings and we'll go through and like show some of the feedback that we're getting either on Twitter or Reddit or whatever other channel.
Of course.
And just people are super passionate, doing a lot of like really cool inventive things. Like, yeah, it's been great, and that's been a lot of like fuel for us to want to share more. You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's yeah.
Well, and I can imagine that can be something where, and if you want to head to the Speedway level next too, we can try that out. I'll
Have
happily
a blast.
do it.
I'll let you start us.
Oh yeah, I'll fail miserably first. I did want to ask. Obviously, it can be a tough thing for the team to have to announce, but with the delay of the game earlier this year for about a month and a half or so, I could see, in having spoken to a few other members of Toys for Bob, the statement of wanting to put more love and care into the product. It seemed to be it's the truth of it. It wanted to make sure like you're all fans of Spyro and wanting to get it right. But how was dealing with the reaction, both good and bad, of something like that?
I think we expected it to a degree, and I totally get it, especially when people have their heart set on like this thing is going to happen for me this day.
Of course.
Totally get that, and I feel like this has just been an awesome opportunity that Activision gave us. That if we didn't have it, I don't want to think about that. I like the amount of things we were able to do. I feel really good about, and I think it's the kind of things that fans will love.
Yeah.
And yeah.
What are some of the things you are most excited for fans to see in the game that haven't been shown already yet?
Haven't
Can you
been
speak
shown.
to? Without, obviously, we won't show it if you don't want us to. But
We've shown a lot. I'm excited for people to play as more of the characters from Game 3.
yeah.
Some more of the boss fights throughout Game 2. There's a ton.
I forgot how tough the boss fights were.
They're awesome.
I was fighting Gulp a couple days ago, and I was like,
okay.
oh, I'm not great at this anymore. It took me a minute to get back to it.
You're doing good.
Yeah, I could be doing better. Let's see, where do I want to go next? There's one more, but I don't. Did I miss him? Was he up above?
You might have been chasing.
Yeah.
Oh, you got him.
Just gonna run out of time very quickly. Let's see, and I'm gonna go this way.
To your question though, like I think a lot of these games is just about exploring and wonder, you know, and everything is pretty cool. Like you'll get to see like just new ways of thinking about how a world would look, and for me that was just super exciting. The first times I get my hands on every level, just seeing what other pieces were in there that weren't there before. So I'm excited for people to see that, and I want to see what things people love. I don't know.
Yeah, it's been incredible seeing, I think, the reaction to people being like, oh, that's exactly what that world was like, and oh, wow, I can't believe that's what the Yeti looks like, or that's what those enemies look like. It's been fun seeing that
the
fan response
Colossi.
on this. Yeah, playing that level again, you get such a sense memory. I think the team is, I feel if you want to give it a try next, I will see how you do. No pressure at all.
Just a little bit.
Again, if you're watching on IGN.com, YouTube.com/IGN, Twitch.tv/IGN, or Mixer.com/IGN, we will be taking your questions. I will not be mean and ask you questions while you're doing this because I would never.
Go for it. I just will say silly things.
Perfect. Let's see. I feel like, of course, I want to ask this, and I feel like it'll be a pretty quick answer. Portal Player 4 asks, are there plans to... Player also wants to know if there are any plans for new Crash games. If you have any, please feel free to throw them in the chat. I will be entering them as we go along. Let's see. Let's see. Ooh, different path. I see. Let's see. That Twitchy Gamer asks, is there a photo mode and can you show it? So there's not a photo mode in the game. Is there any thought about possibly putting one in, or is that sort of...
I think that was something we looked at one point or another, but just there's a lot that we wanted to make sure that we got right.
Of course.
Check out the scars. No, it's stuff like that. We'd get opportunity to like build in fun stuff for an enemy or something.
You have a lot of time left. Let's see if I can go through and find any other questions.
So yes, photo mode was looked at, but in the scope of things, we wanted to make sure that we're giving more attention to details here.
Of course. Ooh. Jurassic Rabbit, which is Mitchell, our producer. I see you, Mitchell. Woo! Nice. Was asking you to do a barrel roll. That's the wrong game, Mitchell. Come on. This is not Ace Combat. Anyway, you did exceptionally better than I did.
Hey, thanks.
So congratulations on that.
It.
Since we're
I've practiced.
Really?
Biased.
Just a little bit. Since we're about a third of the way through, I thought maybe we could switch over to Ripto's Rage. There was one thing. I'm going to slowly go through a save, though, so we can swap over if you want, Mitchell. One of my questions is, so while playing the first game, I noticed it in a couple of the other levels, Monkey Marsh. I forget which... Or not Monkey Marsh. Too many level names are combining in my head.
Okay.
A few of the levels.
Talk about the experience.
Yes, exactly. Noticed a fruit in a few of the levels that looks suspiciously like a Wumpa fruit from Crash.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Would you like to show us some?
I could. I'd happily be able to show us. Here, why don't we quit out and show?
I think that's a happy accident. But I would love to see what you're talking about.
Absolutely. Well, I noticed fans picked it up when there was like a bit of a clip shown from Toys for Bob on Twitter like months ago. I was like, oh, this is a low-res clip of a bug that may or may not be working. I'm not going to trust that now. And then I was playing the game and I'm like, that looks a lot like a Wumpa fruit. And just innately, as a big Crash fan as well, I was like, I need to know. Happy accident, though?
Happy accident.
Okay.
Sorry.
So not confirmation that the Crash Spyro joint adventure is coming in 2 months like we all hope.
Oh,
it's not
we are super busy focused on this
I'm
one.
joking. Of course. No, I know. Let's see if I can go to the level. I think it was in... Actually, yeah, it's going to be there for now. Anyway, so we're going to go there. I am curious, though, in terms of that, obviously the Crash Trilogy remaster came out last year and sort of set the craze of both Crash and Spyro fans. There are so many who cross over.
Yeah.
Was there anything, did the Toys for Bob team at all speak with the Vicarious Visions team and everyone?
Oh, early
about how
on.
that,
I mean, Vicarious did a great job with their game. And
yes,
so
yeah.
we've worked with them a lot in the past. We have a lot of good friendships there. And so it was just easy to go and say, hey, guys, so how did you approach this?
Yeah.
Like, you had tough questions. How did you get a philosophy in the beginning? And they were really helpful just with sort of how to envision that.
Were there any particular lessons that the team learned from speaking with them? Anything about how to approach a trilogy remaster, or anything art-wise or gameplay-wise or anything like that you can recall?
The one that I remember a lot was talking about the love. And I think that really hit the tone of how we were trying to do it as well. It's really a passion for the team to make this game, just with how close we are with the character and just how much of a fun adventure his story is.
Yeah. Anyway.
So they had that too. I see what you're saying.
Yeah, it looks a little bit like a Wumpa Fruit. Yeah. Maybe just as a Crash fan, just a little bit obsessed.
That's okay.
And now we get to see some more Spyro animations. But anyway, I thought that was just a fun little Easter egg, or at least nod. Obviously, the two of them
See, now I got to go back and talk to our team and see
find out if it's, I'm sure there's at least one Crash fan on the team, I would imagine.
There are a number.
Yeah, so we're going to swap over to Spyro Ripto's Rage. So we'll go to the second game. Again, if you're just tuning in, we are streaming the Spyro Reignited Trilogy, which comes out November 13th, tomorrow, on PS4 and Xbox One. Very excited for you guys. My review is up on IGN.com. You can, of course, read it and watch it there, as well as youtube.com/IGN. We're currently streaming on IGN.com, youtube.com/IGN, twitch.tv/IGN, and every time I say all of those names, I'm always afraid I'm going to mess one up. If you have any questions, we are more than happy to answer them as we go through it. Oh, and apparently a trophy just popped.
Sweet.
Perfect. I always have to, I got that. Oh, this is a different console. That's why that's happening. So we're in the final one. I'm going to go a little bit further back. So Ripto's Rage is my personal favorite of the three. I think it elevated design on a gameplay level so much, just in terms of the things you could collect. Obviously, the guidebook helps you keep track of all of that. But the level design, the skills inherent in it. I'm curious was there any different approach in looking at the art styles between 1, 2, and 3 that you wanted to do things with each game, or really make sure they were a holistic whole as you went between the three of them?
That's a good question. I'm thinking back to some of the discussions we had. It wasn't, like that, but a lot of it was like world based.
Okay.
And so just with how diverse the worlds you go to are, opportunities there to have uniqueness, and this will be this artist's flair or touch, and this artist will have this level, and they'll be guiding that, and it'll be a little bit there, but it was all sort of with the mind of keeping everyone in harmony with one another, but still being able to dress we're going to really go hard into the snow and see what snow plays like.
Okay. So it was a lot of, it wasn't necessarily, we're going to make this how it translates into 2. Gotcha. Let's see. I'm going to go into one of the mid-levels or so. Do you have a personal favorite of the trilogy? Of all three?
Honestly, I started off the first game.
Okay.
And as I spent more time playing Ripto, that in particular the starfish in Sunny Beach, things were freaking
I was walking right there, actually, so we can go over to them.
Well played.
Yes, of course. That was
totally not planned.
No, of course. We definitely don't have a script for these 2 hours.
With how many I'm saying, I hope it's not a script.
Oh, that's every week on everything we record here. I get at least 30 and it's just part of my nature. Again, if you have any questions, be sure to drop them in the chat. I'm going to go through Ripto's Rage a bit now. Yeah, what I love about Ripto's Rage specifically, I think, is these distinct little vignettes that you get with each
they're
game.
awesome.
It's what was the philosophy like going in for these, of making sure the beginning and ending of these levels, they feel like mini movies, essentially.
They do, and they were so ridiculous in the original. They were just adorable and so weird. It'd be why is my eyebrow? What's going on here? Okay. Yeah, you can really get that out. That's part of the heart of the Rage.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I love that. God, they're so cute. These weird little babies. Every bit of Ripto's Rage, and I think it's why it's my favorite, is it feels so distinct from world to world, and there's one of those little starfish eyes.
Did you see his eyes? When you stay by him for a minute, his story goes part crazy. Anyway, sorry, you were saying.
Oh, he loves it. I've just what I love about Ripto, and I think I could imagine it's maybe a bit of a challenge, is where I think the design of 3, at least in my mind, overall the art a lot more holistic. It has the dragons uniting everything, and those worlds are somewhat smaller than 2 and 3. But 2, it seems like level to level just varies so much. That more of a all of this still stayed unified though.
Challenge just in terms of trying to make sure you can hit the target in a way that's honoring it and still do fun things with it. But it's a really cool challenge. I'm speaking totally for artists here, but I've been taking them. I know the challenge of coming to these different levels and seeing how you can do them and how you can approach them.
Each feels so distinct, and I don't know if I'm just crazy in my conspiracy theories of how the original Spyro was designed, but it feels like a lot of levels go in twos, where sometimes enemies carry over from one to the next, but it's just of two combined, or there'll be two sand levels and then two wall levels. And I like the unity between levels that your team has really nailed, but also allowing them all to feel distinct as you go through them.
Yeah.
So I want to see if we can get... Oh, yeah. I'm really going for how many times I can get shocked in this level.
Well, do you want to show off the different colors of sparks?
Exactly.
Actually, stop.
Yes.
Oh, can you put that up the camera? Just the good.
Yeah. So
just fun little touch.
That was a little thing I noticed as I was playing too. Yeah, change it with sparks. I love that as a little. Were there any other little things that you were really happy with that the team were able to
I think
get
that
out?
one. That caught me off guard. I'm like, oh, hey, what's up here?
Is it? I mean, I assume from your position with the team and with the project in general, you have more of like a top-down perspective of how things are going on to a certain extent.
Yeah.
Are things still surprising you as you're playing the game and delighting
Totally.
with things?
Totally.
Has anything in particular you can remember? Like we playing it now, or?
Well, you stole my big one with the starfish, because that one, when I first saw that, it just bust out laughing in the middle of the office, which is super fun. Number of odds and ends, but now I'm totally brain farting, so I'll think one will get back to you on that.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
And obviously the is coming out tomorrow, and that's when you would need fire. I forget if I got this orb already. The game is coming out tomorrow. Reviews are coming out today, and impression from a lot of people. How's that been in general, seeing that response?
For me, I'm over here to visit you, so that was pretty awesome. That was a great way to start my day off. I haven't talked to the team about it yet too much. I think people are just happy it's able to be out in the hands of the world. You know, it's we've been working with Spyro for a while, and it's just it's really thrilling to be able to have this come out for people to see.
Oh, I assume after me, especially with Skylander and now this, you grow quite fond of this guy. Is it? Is there ever any times where it feels like, how do you keep it to make sure it stays fresh for the team though?
Well, I think this is the Reignited Trilogy was a great chance for it to be fresh. Just because it's different from how we were working with it before. Oh yeah, you still can get the orb. So yeah,
let's see if I got all these.
The short answer is yes.
Yes.
Yes, and it's been this game's actually the chance to like rejuvenate that experience with the character and make him feel fun in another way that we weren't doing before.
And obviously, I know the script side is not much to talk about at the moment, but I assume for the team as a whole, this you don't want to mark the end of your time with Spyro. So I assume it's.
Chance we have to make games first and foremost is awesome.
Yeah.
So beyond that, we're gonna switch.
Of course. And I'm excited to see the fan response. I think pre-release people are very excited for this trilogy. Let me see if I'm boxing here. Ooh, that's where I want to go.
Oh, the chef.
Let's see how terrible I am at this. Yes, if you're listening at home, you'll be able to hear him or keeping the headphones off to make sure the conversation keeps going. And again, if you have any questions, be sure to drop them in the chat. We are happy to answer them as we go along. I'm going to check.
That Spyro is amazing, dude. Thank you.
That works.
It's the first one that my eyes saw.
Perfect.
So
Let's see if we have any others. I'm going to go through as we... Would you mind taking control as I check into the chat for a moment? I'm going to hop in and see. And again, if you have a question from Mixer, Twitch, YouTube, and IGN.com proper. Someone on IGN.com said, sorry guys, I plan on playing this, but I'm not going to watch play it now. Understand, I think. I just saying hi. Atrocity, so obviously the game launches tomorrow. Someone in the IGN chat asked, and I say one of the rare only misgivings I may have had with the trilogy was like the load times were a little long. Is that something that the team is maybe looking into to want to optimize later on? Is the packages?
The process of getting all the content into the games, just because there's so much,
yes,
and with how big these lists doesn't go off, it's been a challenge. But there was a lot of optimization that there is an opportunity to do more.
Of course, yeah. Just the channel is asking, wait, is this two-player? No, we're just swapping off whenever I'm jumping into the chat.
Just hanging out.
Yeah. Let's see. To just in general, obviously I'm a big fan of 3D platformers. I would assume you. Iowa Hawkeye 24 asks, do you think this and Crash, the combination of these two, will bring up a new age of 3D platformers?
Cool.
Do you hope that the genre sees a revival? I think to go in waves, and I feel like.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of really cool opportunities, and people are making a lot of cool games out there. So, just being able to tell exciting cool stories is always fun.
Yeah, and obviously, mini games of the collection here. Were the mini games a chance for your team to experiment at all with them, to maybe tweak things a little bit more than sort of like the core gameplay, or did you want to really keep these side challenges also very original?
As much as that was part of the fun. I mean, because they are really tough challenges, and it's a lot of like cool experiences you go through with them. So there was an intent to be as genuine as possible here as well.
Absolutely. Going through some of the other questions. Flubber Thunder asks, few DLC that adds new levels since Crash had that. Yeah,
Are there any levels we didn't
unmade.
get?
I feel like you guys pretty much covered the gap with adding this original trilogy.
They made a turtle suit.
It's okay.
You wanna
We
go?
can. I'll hop around back in. Yeah, let's see if we can jump to another level.
Okay.
Go off a few of the different environments. When you die, it says reigniting.
Mhm.
I thought it was just a wonderful little touch.
Try doing some buttons.
Oh yeah, I love that too. Yes.
Well, this is where you can get some of the barrel.
Yeah, this is, Mitchell, are you happy now? Barrels, this is about as close as we're gonna get. Slippy and Fox love Strange Man.
Before you were asking, was it just surprise?
Mhm.
And as we were developing the point, the designer got that in with an engineer and like just specifically difficulty. So like, if it ever reached a point that it didn't feel right,
Mhm.
then that was too hard.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Hello, Spyro.
Gonna go
My
in.
brother Handel and I have been sent here to
Handel
blow
and
up
Dread.
the castle, but Handel got caught by these
It was so weird. I
monsters,
had
and I'm
completely
stuck
forgotten
out
about them until I jumped
here.
into
You
this
can open
level, and it was
the
just
door
one
You're
of
like
those
the
weird.
giant heads.
Yes. Yeah.
and we can complete our
And it was also that weird thing of like, oh yeah, these are the first kind of humans
Mhm.
that I'm seeing, and it's a different feeling.
Yeah.
But, oh boy. Let's see. Yeah, we'll just explore a little bit in
Nice.
this level.
Bob the Frog.
Oh, Bob, I have yet to finish that Bob challenge,
Ah.
but yeah, that's one of my misgivings currently. I'm a bit of a trophy obsessive as well, speaking of
Good.
the collectathon nature, and I want to commend. I don't know who specifically, if there's just one man or woman in charge of trophies, but I love the trophy design actually of these games, the trophy achievements
Oh, cool.
for you Xbox players as well, because it does again add that sort of extra layer of challenge, where it's not just simply complete a level and get it. Was a lot of that sort of inherent in the design of not wanting to tweak what was there, but wanting to add something extra for returning players? Was that a
Totally.
big thought throughout the process of development?
It was an opportunity for us to do a little bit more, and I keep on saying flourish. I feel really redundant, but that's really part of it. Apologize for my repetition.
Oh, please.
But it was just a really cool opportunity to work within our self-imposed constraints to make this still feel right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But thank you.
Yeah.
There are a number of people that helped out with that. I'm going to shoot myself in the foot if I start listing out people
Of
by name,
course.
so I'll refrain.
Let's see. Going through slowly. I want to get to Bob just to see if I can prove myself on camera for those who wouldn't
I
believe
have
it.
faith.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Oh, boy. Let's see. Getting through slowly. These guys did not treat me well on my first way through this level.
Well, this goes back to how we were talking about difficulty before. Like, you definitely feel the ramp between the games. of
Yes.
How there is more intricacy in the way that you approach bosses or enemies. Like, if you think about like an enemy or a boss or an environment is asking you a question as a player, they just ramp it up what that experience is as you go through the games, and you can totally see that even here.
Yeah. Yeah, and I appreciate you feel that through, like you were saying, through each game individually and then the trilogy as a whole.
Mhm.
And it's fascinating to see that change all in like microcosm in this trilogy.
Well, it's sort of like getting to relive those years all over again.
Yeah, absolutely. Was there anything that, at least for you personally,
Mhm.
felt, obviously you played these games back when they were first around, was there anything that stuck out to you a lot more when you're playing them in this newer form? In terms of the level design of the original games or the characters or anything like that that really stuck out from your team?
Stuck out as being different, or
As like maybe something you didn't notice first time.
there's loads of details
Yeah.
that I didn't notice. Like, I definitely did not 100% when I played before. So that's a whole nother layer of depth to these games that I just wasn't engaging on initially. Yeah, nothing like one direct thing. It was
Sure.
like a whole load.
Yeah.
You know.
We'll get over to Bob in a second. Yeah,
Spyro,
to you
you
again
make
so you
a
can
great
hear me.
secret
That talisman yet again. Let's see if Bob will hate me
Hey,
this time.
Spyro, we need those flags to... My
Again, if you're watching us, be sure to go into the comments on youtube.com/IGN, IGN.com, twitch.tv/IGN, and mixer.com/IGN. We'll be happy to answer your questions as we go along and as Bob kicks my butt just now.
Try to read for you over there.
I appreciate it.
Wait, is it out already? No, it's coming out tomorrow, but thanks for asking.
Yes.
You're so close.
Just the Eve. I can probably...
Oh, no, you're good.
All right,
Keep
cool. Oh, and I'm almost out of juice, but there we go.
So,
Oh.
you want that snack, eh, dragon?
It must be great to be able to return for characters that the team might have like a fondness for, or you know, some anger toward over the years.
Hatred.
Yes, and be able to put your own stamp on them
Yeah,
as well.
just a little bit. And it's cool. Like there's been elements where we were able to make some changes that felt really appropriate. Like in the first game, there was so much. Oh, no way. So much with like goo themed throughout the end levels as you
Yeah.
get closer and closer to nasty, and then being able to actually have that reflected in like the weapons that enemies are using, having them switch to goo guns. It was like a really cool thing to just sort of do unification. Like,
Yeah, there is absolutely that sense of unification, like you were saying, that I think definitely the original games have, but the fact that you're all able to add so much detail to them and so much distinct
Nice shot.
ideas. Thank you. Let's see. Where is he? There we go.
Still after my
Was the team working with, obviously you spoke to Insomniac, were you, of course I just immediately get hit. Were you working with any sort of original like Spyro Bible? Did the team have a Bible of how to approach Spyro from the Skylanders days? How did you approach like making sure everything felt in line with the worlds that were already created, but
There's-
what you wanted to add?
Yeah, there's a lot of actually, since the game's out there, a lot of resources that we were able to pull from. I personally got the old guidebooks again, just so I could like look deeper into the challenges or hidden areas that I didn't get before. But there's a lot out there in like public domain the team was able to access just for informing like decision making and what felt right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And were there anything that, as fans responded to the game and seeing so much of it, that really stuck out to you as something they were gravitating toward, or anything the team wanted to make sure was addressed properly for the fans that were?
Yeah, well, I mean
Carrying.
that's inevitable, especially as we're showing stuff that's in development.
Yeah.
But it was really cool because a lot of it was like validating some of our decisions. So, like when we showed the first couple of dragons and the response that people gave to those, it was sort of amazing, and that was like, okay, we totally nailed it. Let's keep going. That kind of thing versus what are some other ones. Oh, just polish elements that we knew we were going to be getting to, but just hadn't, and we wanted to like get content out there for people to see. So if it's something like refining the color of the skybox so that it feels more in line with the original, so it's more blue or whatever. I mean, like people actually have been a great resource in terms of like sharing those elements, and it was really cool because that reflected a lot of the things that were like, okay, this is on deck for next week, and yeah, this has to be prioritized now because X, Y, and Z already called it out, you see? So people are really interested and care about this.
Yeah. Well, and I imagine Spyro fans are so dedicated and have such fondness for these
They are
original adventures.
awesome.
Yeah. It seemed there's such a passion to it, but it's such a warm passion to making sure, and obviously they trusted your team, but it's also that thing of like, we want you guys to get it right, and we hope we do. And it felt like from minute one, though, that the response was positive in such a way of like, oh, you understand who this character is.
I know we all really hope that people are continuing to feel that way
Of
because
course.
that's how we feel about Spyro and his adventures. So it's
Oh, ooh,
most.
there. Yeah. He'll get me on the last one. That's what will always
Such is
happen.
life.
Oh, go. Let's see. I'm now fully understanding as you were in the level being like, I can talk and play
Sort
at the same
of.
time.
You're doing much better than I was.
We'll see. You did 100% that speedway, which I did not. So, oh, let's go. Let's go. Nice. Okay. Then yeah, we can jump into a boss battle after him. I just wanted the satisfaction of doing that on camera. That's really
I think
all.
that was so worth it.
Thank you. I appreciate. This has been a vanity project on my part, so I'm glad you could take part in that. Yeah, we're gonna jump into a boss battle. I'm gonna look through some of the questions, if you wouldn't mind taking the reins to get us there. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in any of the chats that we've been mentioning, and we'll be happy to answer them as best we can.
Which one you said you had trouble with Gulp?
Gulp was my.
So
yeah,
I won't do that. I'll do Crush.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
Saving me the embarrassment.
No.
Or we could just spend an hour on Gulp. That's also.
I mean, I could just die here a lot too. So
Perfect,
It's
yeah.
very possible.
Actraman asks, is it both in 4K and 1080, or is it made specifically for 1080? 1080, yeah. Phantom Music, sorry, I don't think this will be released on PS3 when
No.
this comes out. I don't think that's the intent, but if you have a PS4, you can definitely get this
Now
November
is the
13th.
time to really lean into the PS4 technology.
They have a lot of Black Friday sales coming up. You could probably get one pretty cheap, I would imagine. Let's see. HSV Caprice asks, can you play the whole game as one adventure, or do you have to choose which game you want to start? You do, of course, let everyone choose from the jump where they want to start with the story. It's not a playthrough in chronological order sort of scenario.
Yes.
Which I appreciate, because I've had a lot of things where I'm like, I, again, can't get through Bob. I'm going to jump back to 1 and play a couple levels there and see how that goes and things of that nature. And I do appreciate how easy you've made the jumping around in all these games. Not just among the main 3, but from level to level with the guidebook.
That's what felt a lot like the modernization too, or the opportunity for modernization.
Let's see as we're going through. We're doing pretty well so far.
Thanks.
Let's see what else we have here. A couple people noticing in the chat. Thank you for settling whatever lag issues there were, Mitchell. You are a saint, and we appreciate you always.
And a gentleman.
Except for your weird barrel roll, love. I'm never going to let that go. A couple people asking again about the release. Obviously, it is November 13th for PS4 and Xbox One, so hours away. Will this ever be released on PC or Switch? We've gotten that question, I think, since day one.
I appreciate that question. I wish I knew.
I do think, obviously, it makes sense, PlayStation being Cratchit's home, but PS4 and Xbox One being synonymous. I do appreciate and can only imagine how much more development time it takes to have to take into account more systems.
Yes.
So I appreciate the focus on that. I know a lot of people have been asking. They ask me a lot, and I'm like, I don't work on the team, so I can't really tell you.
No, our attention has been totally to make sure that we were getting this experience right for PS4 and Xbox One. And please let me know.
Ooh. You have enough health, I believe. Let's see. Very nice. There we go. That was a simple one for you.
That's okay.
I feel we
I
can.
need that. I need that boost in my ego,
Exactly.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is for both of us. This is to make sure we both do it.
It's a learning and growing experience.
You made the game and worked for so long on it, and I spent several days reviewing it. So really, it's about equal work.
It
there.
really is.
It's about the same. Gonna keep jumping through. We'll grab to a couple other levels. Let's see where I loved. It was so funny seeing the design of Ripto for the first time, because I had to go back into my head of like, how close is it and how much isn't. But when he's on, and at first I was like, it's a bit different,
Yeah.
but it I think works so much for the characterization that you have with him. Was there ever any uncertainty with any of the side characters of how much liberty to take in designing them, of keeping it so?
Yeah. No, totally. And I mean, that's part of the iteration process. So we'll do like a couple base concept drawings and see how they feel in relation, and then like really lean into Josh and Amber's expertise of what feels right, and they'll spend a lot of time and have discussions about, okay, well maybe this element can change. We can do more to pronounce eyebrows here, or get his horn up higher, or really work on making sure the collar is like Count Dracula-y or something like that. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of pieces that go into it, and it's an evolution.
Yeah, and I love that you see, I think, a lot of the personality expand inherently in the 3 games as they were originally, of the evolution from the first to the third of side characters and the villains and everything, and seeing what your team's able to do with those. I think it just elevates those characters even more. So some of these open environments I just adore, especially in Ripto's Rage. Is there any specific different philosophy that went between specific levels versus these more like open world hub areas, or was it all sort of a piece?
Philosophies how?
In terms of, I guess, the art design, the readability, because here so much you're not worried about running into enemies and things like that, or solving as many puzzles.
Well, I think we were lucky because that's in the initial design. It was like that.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't the case where we felt we needed to add enemies to a level, so there was an increase in challenge. Like the hub levels are a place for you to like recompose and plan out your next steps of your adventure. Really.
Yeah.
And so it was just a good opportunity to lean into that historical data.
Of course. I'm going to. Do you mind if I throw you into another speedway and see how you do? Because you were doing well at the last one. I'm going to do terribly.
Oh, then I will do terribly.
Okay, we'll see how
Let's
it goes.
see.
All right. Yeah, I do love these load screens and these little touches. I did want to talk a little bit. We were talking earlier a bit about it, but level design in general, the teams weren't working with the original code or anything for these Spyro games. So how did the team go about reconstructing these 3 games? Like, where did that process start, and how did you go through it?
Oh, okay. So I think
Already
you
missed
should
it.
go again.
Yeah, I'll go.
As
one
I
time.
start talking about Spyroscope stuff. We in-house created a tool called Spyroscope that sort of evaluated the various elements of the gameplay. So it was from the ways that enemies would be placed throughout a level to relative heights of jumps or runways to how this bird will pop off the lever. But it was like all sorts of like details that built into the placement of things, and that felt really important as we were trying to keep genuine with how the game felt. We couldn't have it be that these bungee jumping dudes were going to be like twice as far apart, because you have an experience. Like a number of people have this like heartfelt or heart-pained experience rather of going through these levels and going through these adventures. And if you like change something that they've done 100 times, they're like, okay, that doesn't feel right at all. Why are you doing that?
Yeah.
Don't mess with my childhood, kind of thing. And that was the last thing we wanted to do.
And it's pretty incredible knowing that you weren't obviously working with. Just totally. I will hand it over to you. At least I got through one of them. I do think it's pretty incredible knowing that the team wasn't working with that original stuff to be able to recreate so much of it and do it, in my mind, exactly accurately to at least what my mind remembers, and to what I think a lot of those original experiences were for a lot of fans. I'm excited to see you 100% this level.
Not gonna happen.
I believe in you. I have faith. Let's see.
See if I can answer caroling.
Otzel King, yes, this is out tomorrow, so if you haven't already pre-ordered, you still have time, or you can just download it when it comes out. Let's see what else we have going on. Answered that question before. Again, we're on IGN.com, YouTube.com/IGN, Twitch.tv/IGN, Mixer.com/IGN.
There you go. Ah! You handled this with much more grace than that.
I still did right. I was practicing yesterday, I'm not going to lie. I wanted to make sure I would be okay at it.
Not gonna happen.
JS is asking, we're currently playing Spyro 2 Ripto's Rage. We're bouncing around between the trilogy. I don't want to keep you... you're going to retry?
I'm going to try one more time.
I like this. All right, let's see what we go through. We'll be jumping into... We did a bit of 1 before, and now we're in Ripto's Rage. We're going to jump into Year of the Dragon a little bit later. And I love just teasing ahead to Year of the Dragon. The baby dragon designs are just so cute. I was playing with my girlfriend, and the first time she saw a baby dragon, she like lit up and just kind of grabbed the controller and wanted to find more. And I was like, okay, go ahead. Like, this is your game now. I'll let you find them all. I'm going to keep going through. Again, if you have questions, please feel free to drop them in. People asking about trophies. Is there a platinum for each game? How would you rate the difficulty out of 10 for the plat? I'm in the interest of scores for games, not scores for trophies. But there is a platinum for each game, which as a trophy hunter myself, I did appreciate that you guys didn't make it one complete trophy list. You can grab them all. Like we were saying before, I really appreciate the trophy design in these games. A lot of them encourages you to do things outside of just completing a level or completing every challenge as you normally would. Because as a Spyro fan, we're addicts for the collection anyway. Ooh, let's see if you can... Oh! Ooh. That last guy cost you.
Your turn.
Oh, boy, this is not going to go well for me.
Progress. It's slow progress.
Rotten Tanuki asking 4K on Xbox One X, and as we were saying before, it's 1080 for both systems, correct? Yes. All right, let's see how this one does. I was on a live stream recently racing in another game. I lost that race, so more embarrassment on camera for me is all I'm asking for these days, apparently. Let's see. There we go. I won the first one, but Barrett will never let me live it down that I lost even one of them. Ooh, that was bad. Let's see, I missed this. Ooh, I missed all three of them. Oh, well. All right, I'm going to go back over here. Let's see.
Someone's asking hey, does controls feel good like the original Monkey?
I guess I can answer that one initially, and then we can talk a little bit about the control design, all of that again. But yeah, for me, it was pretty crazy just immediately falling back into, I did almost the same. Thank you. Falling back in, oh no, that guy over there. Falling back into the mode of Spyro, it felt pretty much immediately, this is how I exactly remember that charge jump going or his fire breath going. It was even that funny thing of, I forgot how good his fire breath, the reach of it can be.
Mm-hmm.
And so the first couple enemies, the bigger guys who you have to fire, I initially let them hit me because I'm like, I got to be really up close. And it's like, oh no, you got the hitbox of it just exactly as it was. And I really appreciate that. That went through, as we were saying a little bit before, that went through a lot of fine tuning.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. What would you say?
I'd be really lucky to get that one and done.
Ooh, yeah.
Sorry, you were going to say...
Oh, no, I was just going to ask in general about fine-tuning the controls. Was there any particular part of it that was a persistent thing of making sure that went through a lot of iterations for getting Spyro right?
I think the every minute actions, like the charge and the jump and the breath, those are ones that just... There's always going to be room to question or interpret or polish, I guess. And so it's not that they were ever really wrong. They were always in like places that felt fun to play them. But the team that worked on them definitely were carefully making sure to get as much possible to feel as perfect as possible.
Yeah. Let's see. I'm doing okay. Yeah. Okay. These guys seem to be the trouble area for us. So see
Well played.
Okay. If I do this here, I have not done this at home, so this will be
done. Well
with a last-minute slam. Thank you. And that's the end. We're done with that. No, we're gonna keep going through. What time is it? We can probably hop into Year of the Dragon right now. If that works for you. Cool. We'll hop in. So we're gonna hop into the third in the trilogy, Spyro Year of the Dragon. As we've mentioned before, we are answering any of your questions if you have them in IGN.com, YouTube.com/IGN, Twitch.tv/IGN, or Mixer.com/IGN. We'll be happy to answer those questions. Mitchell, if you see anything as both of us try to prove that we're decent at this game, please let me know. And we will jump ahead into that one. Let's see how this goes. Save slots. Year of the Dragon. Yeah, so I'd imagine for the third game, there must have been a lot of fun being able to play with these side characters a bit, especially Sheila, Bird, just everyone that you have at your disposal. Can you talk a little bit about...
They are a cast of characters.
Yes, yeah. Can you tell me a little bit about wanting to maintain what people love about them, but also wanting to modernize them?
Sure. I think the challenge there was very similar to this challenge we had with Spyro. The team, as they were working on it, were paying attention to just the details about what was genuine from the original game. And so you'll see that in how the behaviors are coming together. Yeah, it felt like a very similar challenge just because it's meant to expand on the roster of what it's like in the Dragon Realms.
Yeah. All right, let's see. We can go into a Sergeant Bird base right now. I definitely had that timed and perfectly ready to go for the stream.
Good.
Everything has been exactly to script.
Nice.
And again, if you have questions, we will be happy to answer them as we go along. The game comes out November 13th, which is just tomorrow. Are you able to take a break after this? You take a few days off now that the game is coming out?
I hope to.
Yeah. Take some time.
I have plans to play the game with my girlfriend. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been fun sharing the trilogy around with people in the office, both who know Spyro but also don't, but had like a tertiary understanding of him. And I had a group of at least 4 or 5 people at my desk just watching, and were like, "Oh, this is just a Saturday morning cartoon. Like, it looks exactly like what I'd be watching right
It's
now."
easy to jump into. Like
Yes.
it's engaging to watch, which has been really cool.
Yeah.
Like, why do you have a flying penguin with rocket launchers on his shoulders? Because. And that's all the reason
Because
you
we
need.
should, exactly. Yeah, seeing the updated designs for some of these characters, and even going back to Ripto's a little bit with Moneybags.
Oh, jeez.
That
guy.
Wonderful person.
Uh-huh.
Or animal, I should say, not a person. Let's see. Okay, there we
Greedy bear.
immediately, the first time he asked me for gems, I was like, "Oh yeah, this relationship again." I remember it well. Let's see.
I love those windows.
Yeah, they're gorgeous. Was nailing. Obviously, these characters have a little bit of a gameplay difference to them than Spyro.
Loads difference.
Yeah, was that you were talking a little bit about it was that refinement sort of thing, but were there a lot of challenges when it came to making sure they all still felt pretty distinct? But
There's a
in
lot of
lines?
different gameplay with them.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's its own challenge. I feel like I said it's 5 times there. The amount of challenge that goes to making sure that it still feels right when you're shooting rockets or if you're swinging around your icy club. Even just how a kick is going to work when you're bouncing on your tail as Sheila and doing a kick, and what that's like with the way enemies will respond to it or get knocked back, like how that feels. There's a lot of tuning that's not the same. Like, I think the Sheila one is closest to Spyro in its charge. But yeah, just thinking about just the mechanics of like Bentley's club smashing down.
Yeah.
Or his weird fan baseball move. Like, yeah, you don't really have that throughout the other characters, and so just another one of those pieces where you want to get it right.
Absolutely, but I think it also allowed the Toys for Bob team, at least from the outside, to add again yet just another layer of personality into these worlds. Especially because these levels take on such a different. I'll get there. We go.
Nice.
Take on such a different design a lot of the times to the levels you're playing through as Crash.
Spyro, you mean?
All right, God, Spyro. Yeah, sorry, it's been a day.
I'll just point
everyone.
to the pin on
I
your shirt
appreciate
or your
that.
jacket.
Yeah, I have him here. I know who the characters are. Oh boy. Here we go. As you can tell, I play games and talk very well sometimes.
I totally get it. It's good that you could freeze a rocket.
Yeah, exactly. I was trying to show the freezing technology.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
Evolve brought together.
Oh, baby dragon.
So cute. I love them so much.
It was cool with them. They had like so much inherent personality, and like in terms of storytelling, it's going to be different from the dragons from the first game because, you know, babies, they haven't had the chance to build up their life, but they still have so much personality.
Of course. And it's silly, like, again, I made the sort of like fanfic joke before about the original dragons, but because of the life that you've been able to bring to these worlds, it feels so much more fleshed out in terms of the mythology and the way these characters interact with each other and inhabit. It feels like a lived-in world in so many more ways.
Oh yeah.
Was that part of sort of like the main goals, mission statement of like to give these more of a lived-in feel?
That's part of the spirit that we were trying to get at with the games. That's part of the like modernization process, I think, in terms of like what is it that makes this still feel genuine and still feel like a great experience for today's gamers. We can speak as much as we want to how these games were great when they first came out and like what it was that we loved about it, but for people who weren't around back then or just didn't get their hands on it, they don't really know what we're talking about as much. And so the game itself or the games themselves have a lot to offer that's just really fun and inventive gameplay. So.
Yeah, it's interesting to see, like I was saying, some of the people in the office who haven't played Spyro discover some of that, where they have this readability of how a 3D platformer works, but then you throw something like this character into it, and they're like, oh, that's a little bit of a different thing than I was expecting. Oh, let's see what's to get him. Let's see if also which camera am I using? Let's see if I can get him. Oh, he is a wily one.
Don't trust penguins with rockets. Is really the moral here.
Yes,
boys and
yeah.
girls.
You've been teaching a lot of life lessons with this game, which I appreciate.
Nice.
Can I grab that with this? Yeah, it's been interesting seeing the response after the review and talking to a few people who are excited to play and seeing a lot of people say, I love these games when I was younger. I'm going to now share them with my son or my daughter, and it's nice to hear
That's
that
so cool to hear.
generational gap.
Like that makes me really happy.
Do members of the team, like, were there, I guess when you're testing this out for different audiences, were all different ages brought in to sort of see how they respond to
We
Spyro
had a
being
number
involved?
of people. I mean, like I brought people in to just come play, like friends and family kind of
Yeah,
stuff. So that happens naturally. That's a lot of the time at Toys for Bob. We'll do stuff like that and make sure we're getting some people of different ages and interests. Check it out.
Yeah. Did you notice whenever you've seen maybe younger audiences or people who don't know Spyro, do you see them gravitate toward anything in particular of the games, or is it?
I think that it's the charm and just like how wacky the characters are.
Yeah.
That's usually the one that people point out.
Let's see if But sorry, my my collection was kicking in of just like, oh, I need every gem right now,
Yes.
otherwise we can't go through this level. All right, let's see. And again,
Making good progress.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Again, if you have any questions, be sure to let us know. We'll be playing through a bit of Year of the Dragon as we get into the tail end of this stream. Thank you so much to those of you who've been watching, by the way.
Yeah, thank you.
Watching us be good and bad at the flying levels in particular.
I see a question here for you.
Ooh.
How do the controls feel with Sergeant Bird from Red West Wing?
They feel great. I was going to test out being on the different camera views. I think more of a passive camera person, which was what was throwing me off at first. But yeah, it's fun having that moment of, oh, I need to readjust because this isn't just Spyro. And it's interesting having these like microcosm games within a game to have to deal with.
It's not just like quest going.
Sure. Yeah. Let's see. There we go. Got that guy. But yeah, it's fun to easily adapt in something with like Sheila, and you notice that obviously, like you were saying, the similarities between Sheila and Spyro. God, it has been a day, Mitchell.
I get it.
Yell at me. Boy, let's see. Who do we have here? Oh yeah, and I love now seeing the other side. That reflection is gorgeous. Oh boy.
That's just one of the little touches that the artist got.
We have had a lot of questions, I think, both before the launch of the game and now, like as we're approaching launch, that a lot of people have been asking. On the technical level, we've heard some people sort of be a little bit uncertain about. Yeah, that. Of course. As I start to get into a question, I was getting into a question. We've had a lot of fans asking about the fact that some of the games of 2 and 3 need to be downloaded, and we've seen some of that. People be uncertain about what that means in particular, and I want to speak to you about what that meant for the team, because obviously to me with the delay, I think a lot of the intention, like we were saying, the love and care of wanting to put into the game. Sure. But can you speak to some of what the technical realities are?
Yeah, as much as a non-engineer like me.
Yes, yeah.
It was, these games are rather large. That's the really simple, quick answer, and fitting everything with all of these massive open worlds in was just a lot of data. Okay?
Yeah.
And realistically, the time, the extra time from when our release date changed was specifically to just make sure that we were getting the polish that we wanted. And so they weren't directly related. Like, it wasn't that we were using that to try and fit something or X, Y, and Z.
And now we have 10 more gigs on the disc.
Things you can't change. No, it was. Did I answer that?
Yes.
I feel like
absolutely.
I rambled around it because I was really interested in how you were handling Bird.
No, just because, a lot of people ask, and it is that thing of there are so many technical aspects at play that I think sometimes it's easy to overlook the realities of just.
Well, and I mean, I feel like it's pretty standard fare with games right now that you're going to have things that you download with them. And people are welcome to different sides of that argument. I totally get both of them. And this was the right decision to make for the Reignited Trilogy.
Yeah.
So I'm glad we did it.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, having played through all 3 of the games, everything runs well and looks great. And I understand the philosophy of wanting to make sure
Thank you.
all of that stuff played well as best as it could. Let's see. Oh, hello there.
Nice work.
Thank you. Let's see if we can get through. And again, if you have any questions for us, be sure to jump into the chats and let us know. Twitch, YouTube, IGN, Mixer. We are all there all the time. Not all the time, but for
enough of the time.
Enough of the time we're there that you can ask us questions. Let's see.
Oh, that little angely rhino.
Specifically going to enemy design and
Sure.
everything. Well, I've talked or asked you a lot about, the dragons, the
Mhm.
dragon babies, all the side characters, but specifically with enemies and wanting to balance that need for making them readable to understand what their actions are, but
Mhm.
also giving them so much more life. Can you speak to a little bit of that
Well,
process?
it's that, in addition, it's also making sure they feel unified with themselves. Like,
Mhm.
Game 3 has loads of Rhinox. You have to make sure that there is some strong parallels between them,
Mhm.
just because with the original games, it was pretty evident that they were all built from a similar base model.
Mhm.
And that's sort of part of the charm and identity of it. I think that continues. Oh, nice. With the aesthetic design and the gameplay design of the enemies themselves, in as much as when you're making a Rhinoc or a Nork butt, if you will,
Mhm.
you want to make sure that action has like the feel of the originals, and it'll play the way that your muscle memory will respect,
Yeah.
but still hits the spirit of the same way the levels do, what your imagination filled in the blanks for.
Mhm.
And so it could be that there was just like a smaller animation cycle that they had, and we're able to put a little bit more in terms of like motion or waving down at somebody or some kind of like elaborate death animation. Something like that. It could be any number of things.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Yeah, seeing the way some of them go out in a blaze of glory
Mhm.
has been quite satisfying.
Yes.
Oh, let's see if I can navigate through here. Oh. Yeah, talking to mentioning before some of the jumps being
Nice
easier
work.
in the game. Some of it is still very difficult,
Mhm.
and it's nice to have that balance. Okay, let's see.
Still got one more.
One more. Hopefully, I can find him. Oh. Let's see. Oh. I'm just like,
Charging
let me
through.
just get out of here. Oh no, not gonna make that mistake again. There we go.
Go up and to your left. No, you got that.
This is the problem when we're talking and playing.
Mhm.
Will happen sometimes, but I believe we can find them. And if not, there's always the exit level button.
Yep.
Uh,
Conveniently
yes.
inside of the guidebook.
yeah, well, the guidebook philosophy
Mhm.
for obviously it was a big thing in Ripto's Rage
Yeah.
that the other two games didn't have
Mhm.
exactly. Was that wanting to honor the legacy? Like, why did you decide to go with the guidebook for each game, or maybe not have a new book in game
Sure.
one versus a unified sort of thing?
My memory serves, that was something our UI team championed really early on. I think it was a good decision by Russell and Jim. They just sort of saw that this was an opportunity to make this feel like a unified Spyro Reignited Trilogy as
Yeah.
opposed to Year of the Dragon or Ripto's Rage, Spyro the Dragon. And it worked. Like, as soon as we got it in there, it was something that felt right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there were like, they started off with a number of mock-ups that we went through and reviewed with the art directors and the design directors, and just sort of talked through the implications of it, and it all felt like it wasn't impeding on the way that you could remember the games.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It doesn't in any way hamper the experience of playing through those for the
Yeah.
first time or for the 20th time, but it very much enhances my dire need to collect every gem.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Why don't we go around for a little bit?
I'm curious, just a question of your gameplay experience.
Yes.
Realizing you aren't using the minimap.
Oh, yeah.
By choice? Is that how you prefer to play?
It wasn't originally, like, I did have it on at the beginning and then I just shut it off. And for me personally, and this sounds like I'm going to be trying to sway favor with you.
No.
Just the worlds are so pretty, and I didn't necessarily
totally
want
get it.
that in the way of some of it.
It's almost 50-50 with how people feel about
Really?
that. Because, I
Interesting.
mean, there's some element of these games are just exploring.
Yes.
And you're going out there and just the sense of wonder that you get a chance to, like, fulfill.
Yeah.
It's really awesome.
Absolutely.
And then some people like to know detail. I am here.
Exactly. Do you use it, or are you?
Depends on the day.
Okay.
Really.
Okay.
I feel like
Yeah.
the days where I'm getting really neurotic about making sure I have everything collected,
Yes.
those are
yeah.
the days that the minimap comes on.
Yeah. There's definitely been on my like quest for platinums. There'll be okay. I need to figure it out. that's where I am. Okay, now I
Yeah.
can go. But yeah, I think there's such a fidelity to the worlds that the Toast for Bob team has put together. I like to just let it speak for itself. We'll jump into another level here just to show off a little bit of a different view while playing
Sure.
with Spyro here.
Oh, jeez.
Just
This one's a
immediately-
great one.
Yeah.
So, one of the first times I remember looking at this, the team had already gotten some good progress on it, but the geckos. They had this really profound audio cue that they were giving
Interesting.
that when you start the level, they're right there by you, and
Yeah.
so it'll trigger that pretty quickly.
Mhm.
So my first fondest memories of this level were, very nightmare, very very loud, and like I had earphones on at the time. I'm like, oh my god, what am I?
What have we gotten
Yeah.
ourselves into?
Yes, but this one has a fond place for me.
Could understand that. Are there any other levels that stick out to that as like in the development process?
You know, it's the kind of thing that like there are weird stories from so many of them that it's just like little details that
Of
are
course.
triggers. I'm like, oh, totally, kind of thing.
Well, you're having to cover the gamut of so many different strange creatures
Yeah.
and worlds that do like have a basis in reality, but also really don't sometimes.
Just the number of characters, good, bad, other, that are in this is huge.
Yeah.
So,
How is that process of making sure it's in the hundreds, as you were saying before, of
Yeah.
making sure all these characters can be distinct and have their own personality? Like, how were there times where it's like, oh, that guy's a little too close to that enemy, we need to refine him
a little bit. I think that was part of the good work that we saw from all of the concept artists that were working on the game. Characters and levels, there was a lot of communication, and so there was people being attentive to what other individuals were working on to
Yeah.
try and make sure that there was like a degree of respect.
Okay.
That okay, we understand that these levels are sort of close, but this one can lean a little bit more to the magic elements and like the little curvature on the buildings versus another one is going to be more rigid with like stone faces or like,
Okay.
so,
Gotcha.
yeah.
Yeah, how that's a curious thing to me, especially about 3, because I do think 3 perhaps more than any of the others, or at least in my mind, pulls from real world locations and architecture.
What you mean the
Just as-
jackhammer doesn't feel fantasy enough?
Yeah, I mean, that weird sci-fi creation.
Yep.
But was there ever a challenge of like, oh, we made this a little too realistic? Was that some of the like sound design things that would come up, or
Well,
the
that
look of
the
things?
one that I mentioned, that was just like it was really loud.
Just like
Oops, sorry. No, not really, because I think a lot of that was informed early on, and I think we're catching that with the concept phases and the early discussions.
Yeah.
Even if we're talking about like the behaviors of an enemy and like how they'd move.
okay.
We had great foundation from the original games and just being able to reference that, and then direction from the team as we were pushing for what like the styles would be like.
Of course.
Oh, skateboarding.
Yes, I want
Go to town, man.
There are some uniquely like late '90s, early 2000s aspect of Spyro,
Uh-huh.
and I thought we could maybe do a little high score face
You're
off.
gonna totally destroy me.
We'll see about that. It was one of those funny things where I had forgotten there were skateboarding levels in Spyro, and then it was I think at Gamescom the first skateboarding footage debuted, and I was like, oh right, Spyro was a teen back in the early 2000s.
Oh, yeah.
like that was part of his DNA.
Radical.
How was like recreating the design of these levels, modernizing them? Obviously, skateboarding games aren't really a thing as much as they were back when Spyro first came out.
Sure. I think that's actually a great place to talk about Spyroscope again.
Yeah.
Just there's a degree of detail that you need with these to make the experiences work the way that your muscles remember them. And these are definitely areas where your muscles are heavily involved.
Oh yeah.
So the team was able to really lean into that technology to try and make this feel as good as possible. And just the spirit of doing a skateboarding game, it's definitely fun. It's especially with how much I suck at it.
Well, we're about to find that out. Yes, you don't really have the Tony Hawk problem anymore. His games aren't really as big
Not
a
a
thing.
problem.
No, I just mean like the competition.
Oh, okay.
That's
Yeah,
what I
because-
meant.
well, I
not
mean,
problem.
Tony
You
and
know.
Spyro, they reminiscent of each
They're
other.
1 and 1.
Yeah.
There we go. Now I can get over to the score rally. No, Spyro, I didn't mean to go there. All right, how do It was just I grew up as a skateboarding youth.
Nice.
And a big skateboarding
Okay.
Tony Hawk guy.
Okay.
So as
real world skateboarding or
real world,
Okay.
never good enough for it to matter.
Oh, same here.
It was bad. But so Spyro makes you feel really good about your skateboarding sometimes.
Yeah.
Uh,
The things that I know I would not be able to do.
Yes, yeah, just 900's like they're nothing. So I thought we could see how this goes. I'm gonna jump in and hopefully not embarrass myself from the jump. Probably gonna. Yep. Ooh, that actually landed. I'll accept that. Yeah, I do love that these little cordoned off areas in games 2 and 3 in particular, of just being able to bring like a shock of life into a level and really change up the design sometimes. I appreciated how, again, unified you guys kept things, but also distinct in a way when jumping into these little side areas.
There's so many different kinds of fun to have between all 3 games. Like, just the amount of like mini games and different experiences, and even like the little side stories you get from NPCs. There's so much. Yeah. I'm honestly not trying to ruin your game.
Oh no. You don't need to try. That's the secret about this. I am curious about that because obviously we've talked a little bit about, the gyroscope scope aspect of that and wanting to maintain what was there. Ooh, it just really, as I'm trying to talk, it just immediately goes away. And the ability to skate. Wanting to maintain that originality of those games. But when you're jumping into things that are so different, like a skateboarding level or like some of those mini games, what was the process like of wanting to maintain it, but also wanting to like branch out? Obviously, Toys for Bob had created so many interesting designs with the Skylanders games. How do you maintain what is Toys for Bob in recreating Spyro games?
I think a lot of these are really in the Toys for Bob wheelhouse in terms of like the spirit of the fun of games and the fun of actions you get to do and the challenge that's inherent in doing like these mechanical operations that are tied to a fantasy story. So I think a lot of the times when you want to try to add new elements or new things is when you have questions about if it's rich enough in its base form. And there's a lot of richness to these games in their base form. So I think that wasn't a limiter for us as much. It was like a playground. Like people were picking and choosing which different areas they could work in and things that they could work on. Be like, oh, I'm really interested in doing this character or this mini game kind of thing. Yeah,
absolutely. I'm gonna let you take a stab at this. So you do. I was in the high 2000s, I think.
I'm not gonna be that.
I think you can get there. And while I'm handing off the controller, I'm gonna jump into the comments. So again, if you have any questions on IGN, YouTube, Twitch, or Mixer, I'm happy to answer them. Nicholas Lopez says the skateboarding is so smooth. It is. It really still feels great. It's crazy how many different types of movement, I guess, there are in the trilogy as a whole, between Spyro himself, but then all the side characters, the flying levels, now the skateboarding. There are all these different systems, but they all feel of a piece and all really work well together, I think. Gonna keep going through and see. Iowa Hawkeye 24 actually asked like 10 minutes ago, can you do a skateboarding level? We're happy to satisfy.
Go Hawkeyes.
Bruno played asking, is this another Skylanders? No, this is the Spyro Reignited Trilogy. Toys for Bob, the developers of Skylanders, have, of course, recreated the original 3.
I'm really doing great here. I'm just like exploring. I'm like,
close. Yeah, these cool ramps. Have recreated the original 3 Spyros. And they have done what I said was a great job on IGN.com. You can see that review there. Keep going through. I believe in you. Oh, you have points on the board now. So we're doing.
Short-lived.
A trick I had noticed, which I was psyching myself out because I was thinking Tony Hawk mechanics. You can ride through the curves and the spins and everything kind of to completion even as you're landing. And just the way that like the mechanics have been thought through, even on the skateboarding, it always feels so great, and I love that, and I like that you're getting more points. I'm gonna keep going through.
Just a little bit more.
Dark Spyro 65, why not Light Spyro? Says, do we get to play it at 11 tonight? I don't think at 11 tonight. All right.
Much better.
You were close, I would say.
Yeah, that's not
You were pretty close. I don't know the exact unlock time. I don't know if you know a specific thing of that
I
nature.
thought it was midnight, but I could be wrong.
Midnight. Yeah, midnight. Occasionally, that's. Like
Oh wait, no. You know what? I think it depends on what time zone you're in.
Yeah,
it might be
usually.
midnight East Coast.
Okay, then yeah, it
Yeah.
might be 9 p.m. on the West Coast. I know that happens a lot. So we are only mere hours away from the launch of Spyro Reignited Trilogy. I'm very excited for you and the rest of the Toys for Bob team to have this out in the world for everyone to play. As a
Me
longtime
too.
Spyro fan myself,
Nice.
I'm excited to see the reception that everyone gives to it. And we're gonna jump to a different level as we're going through. Let's see.
Oh, Space Fox. I'm sorry, I let you down on the skate park.
We could just pretend that. You'll beat me at probably when we do one final speedway in a bit. I'm sure you can get me there on that one. Let's see as we go through. Here we go. Yeah, we'll jump into a few more of the levels here. I forget if I think does this boss fight come up soon? I'm blanking for a second. Jump around.
Did you already
here.
finish the save file? Or is
No,
partway
this
through?
is an early save file
okay.
to make it, so we can jump into some levels that weren't completed. Let's see, did I do Icy Peak was done. I'm like having remembrances to how bad was I at certain levels earlier and how well did I do at them.
Gotcha.
As I was
You
running
can always
through.
check the guidebook.
Yes, you can always check the guidebook. We'll do that right there.
Promotion.
I'm gonna jump us over there now. We're just gonna
Okay.
compete yet again. See
Lovely.
how that goes.
Oh, the
boy.
cows on tractors. Oh yes,
Fond memories of them.
I
Going
do
down.
have some fond memories of cows
Yeah.
on tractors. First time you get to see them, you're like, oh, this is beautiful.
Yeah. And then when you have to try and get them again and again,
Mhm.
those darn cows. All right, let's see. I will let it be your choice. Would you like to do time attack or race the biplanes?
Race the bike.
All right, let's go there first. I will jump into the race and see how it goes first. Probably not well. I already missed a speed boost, so we'll see how that goes. Got him a little there. We'll see if I can get through. Oh. I'll hand it off to you.
Wow. Okay.
And then I'll jump back
We'll
in
go
after.
back
just
and
every,
forth.
every death. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Be taking another look at comments here in the chat. All right, I feel, yeah, you're already doing a bit better than me on this one.
But it's not about being better than you. It's better than the person.
True, that's all that really matters. If we can beat the computer.
We're a team.
Ooh, ooh.
That's the wrong way to fly, Spyro.
If we can't beat them,
Havoc.
I was gonna say, I'm sure you know who to personally blame if we don't win. Oh, ooh, getting through. Yeah, I appreciate the way the difficulty ramps on these two. It was sort of
Oh yeah.
playing the first race. I was like, okay, I'm racing some butterflies. I'm doing okay here. And then I went against the biplanes for the first time. I was like, oh, yeah, there's a bit of a difference here.
Yep.
I really love the way that mixes through not just this game, but like we were saying before, the whole trilogy. Ooh, nice. Oh, almost on his tail. There we go. Ooh. Competitive Spyro entering the Olympics
Yeah.
2020 is the goal. Ooh. Nice.
Really was hoping. to go the other way.
I'm like, I have like 3 or 4 questions in my head, but I'm like, I don't want to ruin anything.
No, go
because
for it.
You're doing pretty well.
It's not gonna last. What's the question?
I would still be in 6th. What kind of day are you having? That was.
What
the-
kind of day am I having? I'm having a great day.
Good,
Thanks.
good.
It's a lot of fun hanging out
That
with
was
you.
it. That was my line of questioning. That
Cool.
didn't work out too well. Oh man. I believe it. Is this lap 3? Ooh, okay. Down to the wire.
Probably not taking the race, but maybe I can get to third.
I was gonna say top 3. I believe in you. Ooh. Ooh. Mitchell, how easily could you beat us in this race? Pretty easily. Yeah, that sounds about right. Mitchell's one of our most
accepted.
competitive players at the office, and by that I mean good at competitive games. So I'm putting you on the spot now.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh. Almost there. We'll see if you can sneak by into third.
I don't even see the dude.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
Oh, and again, as we're wrapping up on the stream here, if you have any last-minute questions, please feel free to ask. We're going to duke it out in this race. I will try one more time since that was a rough
You got
one.
this.
But you got me a trophy on this save,
Nice.
so that worked out. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. We're streaming for just a few more minutes, but we'll be wrapping up here. 10 more minutes. Again, thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah,
for
thanks
all
for
this.
having me.
It's been a blast.
I can't believe we've gone through our time already.
I know. It goes by very quickly.
Indeed.
But hey, you have 3 jam-packed games in this trilogy to get through, so there's a lot
Yes.
in here. And for those just coming to the trilogy for the first time, do you recommend playing them in order? Do you think people should jump around? Do you?
I like the spirit of playing them in order.
Yeah.
It's sort of just the sense of what it was like in the 90s, early 2000s
Absolutely.
going through them. And they evolve in a really nice way.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very nice seeing the gameplay progression that
Mhm.
you've kept intact, but also
Yeah.
the storytelling and all of that. We were saying a little bit before about the cutscenes in Spyro, in Ripto's Rage, how they
Mhm.
sort of tell like these mini movie arcs.
Oh, yeah. The
and the-
interstitials.
And then in here, I love sort of the uniformity you get with the Sorceress storyline and just fleshing that out over time. I think you've done a great job at capturing the spirit of the worlds that you fleshed out in the cutscenes as well.
Thanks.
Which I can imagine is a difficult. Is it a different process to
Yeah.
go after those cutscenes versus building in world?
Yeah, a little bit, but I think that's part of the charm too. And so it wasn't really ever a question of not doing them.
Sure, of course.
Yeah.
Let's see. Still in 5th.
Oh, it took me till halfway through the second lap before I got to 4th.
I believe in a 4th, but
Yeah.
we'll see if I can get any further.
See, those barns were the banes of my existence.
In terms of just hitting them. Or?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
A little too much.
Yeah. I was like, were the roofs just really hard to put on top?
I was aiming
development?
for the top arch a little too much.
I love that there's a competitive skill. This was a thing I had forgotten as a kid because I mostly played these games by myself, as you do. That you can have a bit of a competitive edge to Spyro.
Oh, yeah.
He's that accessible. Let's see. Still languishing behind, but I believe we can get somewhere.
Just get another missile and you'll be fine.
Exactly. But over the last hour and 50 minutes, I can't believe it's been that long. We've been talking a lot about the philosophy that the team had going into this
Oh,
trilogy. And
good
it-
save.
Thank you. I know we talked about it in parts throughout the stream so
Yeah.
far, but I just was wondering, especially as we're sort of wrapping up, if
Sure.
you could talk a little bit more about what that philosophy was and what it was really meant
course.
for putting into the game.
Yeah, I think I said this earlier on, but this is a love letter. Like, Toys for Bob has had a storied history with Spyro, and we were lucky enough to be able to come back to the original trilogy and make it for the Reignited game.
Ooh.
And for us, the philosophy was do no harm. Really, it's about paying the right amount of reverie and respect to the original games because they're really good. We had such awesome source material to work from that to do anything to change it would not be in anyone's best interest.
Yeah.
And so that informed things from how we decided what you'd do, with how the height of a Spyro jump would be or how far you'd glide to the way different Nork would look in each of the different worlds he was in, or Rhinoc for that matter, or even how the bosses behaved. And so trying to make sure that there was honesty in how we approached each of the elements of the games and that it would feel right in people's hands, especially the people who have loved this character and his games for 20 years now. And yeah, that's the guiding light that we had, and hopefully you all can see that.
Yes, and of course you'll be able to see that
Tomorrow.
Just a few hours. Yeah,
Woo!
November 13th, PS4 and Xbox One. As we're wrapping up here, I'll explore the world a little bit and check in on any last-minute questions. But again, thank you so much for joining me on
thanks
the
for
stream as
having
well. Again, my review of the trilogy is up on IGN.com.
And it's great.
As is what I said, the trilogy is great. So that worked out perfectly. Thank you, though. Yeah, it's incredible to revisit these games. They were some of my favorite, like, foundational things that made me fall in love with games way back in the day. And as someone who was also a fan of the Skylanders games later on in my life, to be able to have this sort of, like, full circle thing as a fan is really exciting to see. And I can only imagine how that excitement must be for the team itself.
That's so awesome to hear. Yeah.
And I think a lot of Spyro
Happiness.
fans, of course, I think all around, I think a lot of Spyro fans in general will be very excited about what they have in store. I want to just get him a little, yeah, there we go. As we wrap up here, again, thank you so much all for watching the stream. Spyro will be on PS4 and Xbox One November 13th, which is just a few hours away. And you can all tell me, once you beat these levels in much faster time, how bad I was at the game on this stream.
I'm going to hear a lot when I get back about my 500 skateboarding. That's going to be fun.
Is there an in-office leaderboard of any kind?
No.
Okay.
Or none that I will speak of. It's the members of our QA team are awesome, and they put me to shame anytime I try to play the game. So I will always defer to them.
Of course. I could imagine there are some pretty skilled Spyro fans out there.
Yes.
And I'm excited to see when this game is in the hands of those fans. Just how they explore every nook and cranny of it, and all the little, I think, treats for Spyro fans of the level, the world design, the character design that you all have put into this game. I think will really shine through as they explore it. And as I try not to die going through this.
So the
path.
tank top Rhinoc with the slingshot? Yeah.
I love, as you were saying before, God, that little guy. The Rhinoc design too is just so great in terms of the variation of them.
It's just so many wacky things throughout. It's a lot of fun.
Is that like, was there just a list of like how many different Rhinocs can we come up with and narrowing down one?
There were so many to begin with.
Yeah.
It's just a huge palette of things to work through.
Yeah.
And just the room for silliness and fun mixed in with like the wonder that's like the core of the worlds. Like the enemies are so much fun.
Yes. Yeah.
Total goofballs.
It's like I've taken so much time while playing through it for review of not wanting to kill them immediately just to see how they interact on their own and just behave. Seeing some enemies throw, like that fruit that we were seeing before at other enemies just to have them try to catch it, just seeing them like idle walk around, interact with each other. There's so much of that little distinct charm and detail in here that I think fans... Oh! Not going to trick me that time.
Oh, Mohawk hummingbird.
That I think fans will really enjoy discovering, as I did. Let's get that little guy. As I was playing through, my girlfriend had a strict rule that I could not burn any of the sheep. So if I was on a last life, it did not go well for me. But yeah, even just
that's a new challenge mode.
Yes, yeah, that'll be the hard mode.
No butterflies.
New game plus, no butterflies. But yeah, there's just so much charm even in those extra little side characters too. No. Oh boy. I was gonna say, what a way to go out on the stream dying very easily.
Well, you can go get the baby dragon egg behind you.
Exactly. Let's see. Where was he?
Yeah, okay, I did see one.
Yeah. Let's go. And I think a baby dragon is a good place to end on. Michael.
Well done.
Shout out to all the Michaels out there.
That's my middle name. Perfect.
Then an excellent place to end on. Thank you so much for joining me. This has been a blast.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah.
Again, Spyro Reignited Trilogy is out on PS4 and Xbox One November 13th, just a few hours away. You can currently read my score and my review on IGN.com, watch it on youtube.com/IGN, or just go play the game and just enjoy it because it is a ton of fun and so full of wonderful charm and detail.
Sneezing fire
I
breath.
love it so much. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me for
Thank
this.
you.
And thank you so much for watching.